Okay, Penn State football fans, you know the drill. It's the most wonderful time of the year, Rose Bowl week for the Penn State Nittany Lions. Hope everyone had a great holiday. I'm Bob Flounders, joined by Johnny McGonigal. We hopefully, weather permitting, will be heading out to California around midweek Wednesday. It is Tuesday as we do the first of a couple podcasts here, the Blue White Breakdown. Johnny, you look great. I know you weren't pleased with the Eagles Cowboys game, but I mean, you pretty much outplayed them with your backup quarterback, so you can't feel too bad about it.
No, Bob. Look, feel great coming out of the holiday break. Hope you feel the same.
Yeah.
Look, Gardner Minshew, backup quarterback. What are you going to do, right? Came down to the wire. But no, we're excited to get out to LA. Again, fingers crossed we're able to get there. Later this week, our next podcast will be in person in LA in the media hotel, I'm assuming, as long as nothing gets delayed or anything crazy. But Penn State has landed. They are in LA ahead of the Rose Bowl. They got in the day after Christmas. And, just excited to get out there, excited for this Rose Bowl. A lot to talk about with this team, a couple of, newsy developments around this team since we last met, and regarding recruiting and roster management and that kind of thing. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. As we talk about this game, we're inside of a week now. Utah remains a slight favorite in the game. Not that matters. I think the 2 wins over USC carry a lot of weight, probably, with the odds makers and where the money is, but it's essentially a toss-up game. Penn State won't have Joey Porter Jr. We know that. We're not sure about the left tackle, Olu Fashanu, but at least he is coming back. Who knows if we'll see Kevon Lee, but you're right. Utah's going to be without some players as well, but let's get to some of the developments since we last talked. I think you and I talked a little bit about signing day, not in its entirety, but where would you like to start with the Penn State news?
Yeah, I guess just the one thing that it was kind of a loose end when we were recording last week was Conrad Hussey, the defensive back from Florida, ends up flipping his commitment to Florida State. And we had talked about how he had visited Miami and Florida State the previous 2 weekends, and that was kind of the that was a question mark, and then it was also a question mark whether or not they would get Daniel Harris, the 4-star corner from Georgia, which didn't happen. We talked about that already. But, Conrad Hussey is a loss. So that kind of – it doesn't totally reconfigure their thought process or, their approach to the transfer portal. But even James Franklin mentioned in his signing day press conference that, hey, we have an outstanding, a commitment here that we're waiting on, referring to Hussey, and that if that doesn't come in, then defensive back would be added potentially to the transfer portal wish list, which isn't necessarily long, but there is a wish list that exists. And James talked about that last week.
Yeah. So I think the writing, I don't want to say the writing was on the wall with Hussey, but I think a lot of people right around signing day were almost expecting him maybe to switch sides. So I think Penn State was probably prepared for that. James Franklin, it's tough to catch him off guard anymore when it comes to either recruiting or player management. He's real good about kind of knowing where he sits with players. So hopefully, Penn State will strike in the transfer portal, Johnny. And usually when they do strike, the players usually turn out to be pretty good. But as we look forward to this Penn State. Hold on, I have a crazy dog in the background. As we look forward to that's just Banana. As we look forward to this game, we were at Bowl Media Day, and we heard from all 3 coordinators. We also heard from James Franklin and the players. But Penn State, you look at their schedule, and it's great that they finished November 4-0. And yes, they did win at Purdue, and they won at Auburn. But I don't know. I think it's up for debate whether or not they really have a full-fledged signature win. That's debatable. I think you could say Utah certainly does with a couple of wins over USC. They played at Florida really, really tough. But I think this is a game that really – I don't want to say Penn State's, pointing to this a little bit more than Utah because that's not fair. Utah always plays hard. But I really do think Penn State would like to close with a little bit of a flourish here.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Utah and kind of what they've already accomplished this season, beating USC twice and winning the Pac-12 title. They're kind of playing with house money in a sense, and I guess Penn State is too. Getting the 10-2, not necessarily expected by everyone before this season. I think if you asked the average fan, they'd say probably 8-4, 9-3. But to be here 10-2, and the only losses to Michigan and Ohio State, two teams that are going to be playing, in essence, for a spot in the national championship and for the national championship potentially against each other. This is an opportunity for Penn State to come out and say, hey, we didn't just beat up on Indiana and beat up on Rutgers. We're a team that, just barely lost to Ohio State and arguably could have won that game. Michigan's a different story, but we're a top 10 team. We're a potentially top 6-7 team, and we deserve to be in this Rose Bowl and in this conversation. And we talked about roster management a little bit and the little things there. Joey Porter Jr. wasn't at media day because he's not playing, in the game. He's declared for the NFL. Parker Washington was injured, and we already knew he wasn't playing, but he wasn't there. So you see a few guys not at bowl media day, and you're like, okay, yeah, this Penn State team is going to be missing some guys. This Utah team is going to be missing some guys, Clark Phillips and Dalton Kincaid, two huge absences. But I do really think this is an opportunity for a lot of players on Penn State's roster to step up, and namely a guy like Kalen King, who maybe was a little overlooked this season by Joey Porter, but who ranked second, I think, in the country, tied for second in the country in past breakups. And so Kalen King is kind of the example of the kind of player that, maybe not a household name to the casual college football fan that's going to be watching this Rose Bowl, but a player that has a real opportunity to announce themselves. And even look at Abdul Carter and, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. Those are more household names at this point, but still freshmen that can use this big stage against a really good Utah team, a really tough Utah team. That's going to pose a really difficult test for this Penn State roster.
Yeah, and we'll get further into the game, I think, as we get closer and on our next podcast. But Johnny, you look at Utah's style of play, and you look at kind of where they did their damage, and you look at the fact that the tight end that was just so terrific, Dalton Kincaid, is not playing in this game. From where we sit, it's easy to kind of look at this Utah team and say, look, there's a really good chance they're just going to try to line up and play smash mouth football against this Penn State team and just see if indeed Penn State has made the improvements on defense that they think that they have. They played a smash mouth team on the road, Michigan, and it did not go well for Penn State. When they played Ohio State, it was at home, and they absolutely could have won that game, but that wasn't the same style of play. Ohio State really kind of lives and dies by the passing game. They can run the ball, but I think they've been inconsistent this year. Utah is really, really good at running the ball. And the reason I bring this up is I just wanted to get your thoughts, because I thought it was interesting. Manny Diaz at Bowl Media Day, kind of brought it up, and I think I'm paraphrasing it, but he said, he pointed to the Michigan game and how, everyone is kind of just circling that game as saying, this is really what stands out nationally, I think, about Penn State and their defense. And he said, we reserve the right to improve as a defense, and we feel that we have. So I think, to me, when you look at the storylines for this game, Johnny, Penn State's defense against a rugged offense that I think Penn State kind of knows what's coming. I think this is a fantastic test for Penn State's defense, and I think this is going to be maybe the matchup that I'm going to be focusing on the most. And we're going to find out if that November to remember really was as significant as the numbers indicate, or maybe Penn State just has not played a really, really good team that could really match up with them.
Yeah, stylistically, you talk about the Michigan game, and then, right after that, they had the Minnesota game, but that was one where Tanner Morgan didn't play, and so it's easy to kind of just line up in the box, put 9 in the box and go against Mo Ibrahim when they're, on a backup quarterback. You're not going to be able to do this to Utah. I do think their passing game is affected significantly without Dalton Kincaid. I mean, I put him as a first-team All-American.
Yeah.
Kid who had 70 catches, over 800 yards. Excuse me. He is the guy that drove that offense, and really the guy that moved the chains a whole bunch. I mean, on 3rd and long, it was always going to him. But Cam Rising is a really good quarterback, and he was a guy that coming into the season, I know had some dark horse Heisman vibes about him. Mm-hmm. Losing at Florida in the opener really put some cold water on that. But this is a good quarterback, is an experienced quarterback. In the same ilk that Sean Clifford has a lot of experience, he can draw back on what has happened in the past. I think he's more talented than Sean Clifford, and I do think he's a pretty darn good quarterback. And so when you have that as I don't know, the pillar of the offense in a sense, but at the same time, you have this rugged mentality, the ability to run the ball, and it's kind of been a mentality that's been fostered and has been cultured by Kyle Whittingham over the years there at Utah. I mean, this is a coach that over the last 4 years has won 9, 10, 11 games pretty consistently. I mean, his record is really good at a program like Utah. It's not like you can recruit like a USC can or an Oregon can necessarily there. And he's done a really good job. And I think that mentality, that rugged mentality, that grittiness, for lack of a better word. I'm sitting here in the outskirts of Philly, Bob. I had to work in gritty somehow. No, I think it's gonna be a really tough test for this Penn State defense, a defense that I'm sure has looked back on that Michigan film time and time again and has wanted to prove themselves again and say, hey, we can do this, we can lock up. And so it'll be a big test for Mustipher and Jacobs and Carter and Jair Brown.
Yeah, and kudos to the Penn State kids, the veterans, PJ Mustipher, Jair Brown. I really think not only are they going to play in this game, but they want to play in this game. I think they are. They do want to go out, on the right note. I think it matters to them. And I'm really impressed with Mustipher because, he came back from a really significant knee injury. Second team All Big Ten again. Did all the dirty work inside for Penn State's defense. He's a guy that you could look at him and say, hey, I don't blame him if he wanted to pass on the bowl game and just kind of get ready for the next phase of his football career. But he plans on playing. I think he still feels like this program matters a lot to him, and he wants to see this team in position to win a game. I think that would really, really be a springboard for 2023, given some of the talent that they have back. So that really impresses me. But what I wanted to ask you about was, I don't know what kind of reaction you get from Penn State fans when you're out, or I don't know what they ask you about, but I still, in the last couple of weeks, a common question I've gotten is, so are they still going to do the same thing at the quarterback position? And I think we kind of have our answer because Mike Yursich talked about it. Barring a huge surprise or some injury in practice, they're going to approach this game. The closer they get to this game, especially now that they're out in California, it's going to be a lot like a typical practice week. In other words, they're going to get Sean Clifford ready to play in this game and play all the meaningful minutes. And if there's a chance to get Drew in the game, they will. But there's no change, I think, in how they're approaching the game. And I guess my question to you, Johnny, is any surprise at all with this? And do you think they're handling it the right way?
Yeah, Bob, you said that's a question you've been getting. I mean, throughout the holiday weekend, uncles, cousins are asking me, hey, is Drew going to play more in this Rose Bowl? And probably not. No, I'm not surprised. Look, this is one of those where it's Sean Clifford's team. He's the 6-year senior. He's the 4-year starter. And I still think that Penn State's staff, James Franklin and his guys, believe that Sean gives them the best chance to win where they are right now with, even though Drew Aller has seen a lot of, he has gotten a lot of good experience and relatively speaking, a lot. It's not like he's been starting games or anything like that, but the Purdue experience coming in for a drive and leading a field goal drive at Auburn. And I talked to a handful of his teammates at that bowl media day, Juice Scruggs being one of them, and saying, hey, the way that he has become more vocal, the way that he has become more in command of not only knowing the offense, but knowing the guys around him and being able to communicate and work through some of those things in practice, you like to see that growth from Drew Aller. He's still not on the level of understanding the offense and everything that James Franklin has talked about with Sean Clifford and that kind of stuff. But I would like to see Drew Aller play in the Rose Bowl. I'm sure you would, just to be able to see him sling it and see what he can do. I don't think, barring an injury, we're going to see that. I think it's going to be the Sean Clifford show. Let him go out it's his last game, and then get ready for 2023 and Drew Aller. And Bob, we're supposed to get freshmen available to us at the Rose Bowl.
That's right.
For a media session with the entire team, freshmen included. So looking forward to talking to Drew Aller and Abdul Carter and Nick Singleton and Katron Allen and these freshmen, Dane Durant, guys who have contributed to this 10-2 team that with Penn State's media policy, which a lot of schools have, that we're not able to talk to freshmen. But looking forward to picking Drew's brain and saying, hey, how have you feel like you've developed over this season? So I'm not sure exactly when that is this upcoming week, but maybe we'll have some tidbits for the podcast next time we record.
Yeah, let's sure hope so, and let's hope that I mean, they have always kind of kept that philosophy for bowl games. They make the freshmen available if they can, and boy, if ever there was a year to talk to the true freshmen, it's this year, right? Because it's really hard for me to remember, since I've been on the beat, and it's been a while, Johnny, a freshman class quite like this one. So yeah, I would imagine there's whoever is covering Penn State that's out at that game, they're just going to be hovering around Drew. But there's a lot of freshmen that Abdul Carter is another guy that there are a lot of freshmen that really have had a huge impact in this season, and I think they're going to have a huge impact in the bowl game. So hopefully we will get a chance to talk to them. Let's kind of maybe wrap it up a little bit with this. Just looking at the way they closed the season and the players that emerged for Penn State, I think it's safe to say it was a different team for the better by the end of the season. And a lot of the credit goes to the coaching staff for committing to playing their depth players and to playing their young players. They said they would, and they made that commitment. And I think it was a much better, much deeper team at the end of the year. Who are one or two players, Johnny, that you think maybe made the biggest strides from the start of the season? And it doesn't necessarily happen to be like an obvious candidate. Obviously, Katron Allen is a guy that everyone just thought, it was just really going to be Singleton's year. But boy, Katron Allen is a tremendous player in as a receiver and a runner. Are there one or two players that really stood out to you that, boy, you were like, I thought they could be okay this year, but I didn't know they were going to be this good?
I think Abdul Carter is the most obvious answer. We've touched on him a little bit, but just to continue on that, I remember asking James Franklin after the Rutgers game when he was all over the field. I mean, he's been all over the field every game, even going back to the Auburn game, making plays. Mm-hmm. I mean, he got ejected on his first play, his first hit at the new game, and we didn't get to see him. But then really ever since then, he's taken off. But James Franklin said after that Rutgers game that it's not just the splash plays that he's making; it's the common plays. He's not having any lapses in his assignments. Yeah. He's getting so much better with that, and that's what you want to see out of a freshman. Is you want to see them make the splash play because it's fun and it's cool and you can cheer about it. And if you're in the Beaver Stadium stands and he makes a sack and does his celebration, you want to have fun with that. But if you're the coach and you're there on Sunday morning and you're looking at the film and you're like, hey, Abdul didn't, he fit this run assignment properly. Right. That doesn't show up, or that's not as, common. So I think Abdul's done a really good job at that this season. Another guy that I mentioned earlier, Kalen King, I think as teams started, going away really from that week 1 game at Purdue, going away from Joey Porter and throwing elsewhere, Kalen King has continued to step up, and he played really well even in Joey Porter's absence when he was out for a couple games with appendicitis. And then 1, too, that I've been impressed with was Zane. I was going to say Zane Durant, and Zane Durant's one, but also Drew Shelton. Yeah, and I remember too I believe it was Indiana. Yeah, we were talking to Bryce Effner, and I was actually asking him about Drew Aller. And I was like, hey, where have you seen him grow?
I remember this.
And he's starts talking about Drew Shelton. And for a second, I forgot that there's another freshman Drew that's contributing on this team. But just the detail that he went into, and then talking to other people too within the program and the players and coaches and stuff. And Drew Shelton has left a really good impact on those guys. And when you look ahead to 2023 and even maybe this Rose Bowl, is Olu Fashion going to be able to play? If he doesn't, it's going to be Drew Shelton, a true starter or a true freshman starting in the Rose Bowl. Yeah, and then his role looking ahead to 2023. So those are a few guys, and there's this offense and defense. The roster is littered with these kind of players that have really stepped up and have maybe not, people didn't expect to have the seasons that they had, but they did. And it's been really a joy to watch. It's been fun to see some of these younger players develop the way they have.
Yeah. I have a couple that come to mind. I just remember, even going back to the start of the 2021 season, James Franklin at Big Ten Media Days in 2021 said, you know what? He always goes through like position by position who he really likes and who the coaching staff really likes. And the tight end group came up in 2021. And I would make the argument that, James put it out there that they were as good and as deep as maybe any in the Big Ten and maybe nationally. And they weren't ready, I think, for that responsibility. I think they weren't necessarily showing up in the run game as blockers, a big reason why they only averaged 3.2 yards per rush. But this year, you saw it right away with Brenton Strange in the Purdue game with that catch and run touchdown right before the end of the first half. That ended up being a huge play in the game. Just a well-rounded. He had some big blocks in the Auburn game. He was right out of the gate, Johnny. I think he had kind of established himself as Penn State's best tight end. But I thought in the second half of the season, I continued to see more and more from Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren as all-around tight ends. And Penn State, was not shy about using 2 and 3 tight end sets because of that. But they also came of age, I think, as weapons in the passing game because they are tough matchups and they are athletic. Those two players, I thought, down the stretch, Warren and Theo Johnson, I think really, really, kind of hit their stride. And now I would say James might be right. I mean, they might be the best tight end group in the Big Ten. You could make that argument, and they might be one of the best tight end groups nationally. And I thought the evolution of those two really struck me. I know they weren't playing great defenses. And I'll tell you what, another player, I want to give this guy some love because we didn't always see this guy, Johnny, but it just seemed like whenever he was on the field, special teams or defense, he was around the ball or he was making plays. Dom DeLuca is a guy that no one really kind of focuses on that defense because they have so many talented players, but this was a walk-on player. I think he's a redshirt freshman, but he can handle himself both in the special teams game, whether it's in coverage, but also when they put him in the game, they weren't shy about it. He made some plays. I really thought that this guy kind of earned a role as somebody that we're going to see for the next couple of years get better and better. He's a young player, but he was another guy I thought that really, really played his butt off in the second half of the season, and I think he's earned playing time on defense.
Not only earned playing time, Bob, but I think that if he continues the trajectory that he's on and continues to play well and perform well in the offseason and practice, we saw Barney and Moore get awarded a scholarship. We see it almost every year where you have the video of the player getting the scholarship. It's a really cool moment. Wouldn't be surprised if Dom DeLuca is that guy sometime here in the future because he's stuck out to me too. You touched on the tight ends. One thing really quick, Brenton Strange, when I talked to him at Bowl Media Day late last week, he was talking about, I guess it was a couple weeks ago maybe. Time's getting, with the holidays, it's getting all kind of mashed up.
I hear you, man. I hear you.
But when I talked to him and we were talking about the NFL and the decision that he has, he was saying that he got, in terms of feedback and grades, between second and fourth round grades, which is pretty good if that's the case. And so we already saw Juice Scruggs, the center, announce that he'll be going to the NFL, but he's playing in the Rose Bowl. Yeah. So that happened on Christmas Eve, the night of Christmas Eve. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Brenton Strange ends up having a similar announcement, whether that's before or after the Rose Bowl. Yeah. Here's a guy who, like you said, as a blocker improved this year. We always kind of knew what he could do in the passing game. Last year had a few drops. He's cleaned that up this year. And so I think he has an NFL future and has played well this season on the whole. But yeah, like you said, Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren have come on strong. We've heard James Franklin a couple times this year talk up Jerry Cross, the freshman tight end. They've got a couple coming in from the 2023 class as well. So that's a position that just keeps kind of churning through. And they're trying to, follow in the footsteps and keep that, of the Gesickis and the Freiermuths and kind of keep that culture in the tight end room going.
Yeah, just two quick notes, maybe not huge notes. I think Juice is going to be in the East-West Shrine game. Did he say that? Good for him. Another player we could have easily mentioned as a player that's really come a long way as the starting center. I thought the center position last year was actually a huge problem for Penn State. They didn't get the production I think they thought they would get out of the starting player. And Juice actually was a guard last year, and I think he moved over and played some center in the Outback Bowl. But he played okay in the Outback Bowl. He played better and better, I think, as the year went on this year. And then just a newsy note: Nick Tarburton, who has been at Penn State, he was a member at Penn State's 2018 class, and he's battled some injuries. I think he was originally a linebacker. They moved him to defensive end, and he made some plays late last year, and he was a starter this year for them. High energy, high effort guy. He has announced that the Rose Bowl is going to be his last game, and he's going to take his shot at the NFL. We'll wish him well, Nick, as well. But just two newsy notes. Johnny, I know we got to catch planes sooner rather than later. It won't be today, but it's Tuesday at 1:00. Hopefully, Johnny, both of us, in about 24 hours or maybe a little bit longer, we will be in the air headed to Los Angeles for the Rose Bowl. Knock on wood, no travel issues. We'll see, but looking forward to it. And Penn State fans, Johnny and I will have at least one more podcast for you guys once we're out there, once we get situated, once Johnny has mastered the ins and outs of the hospitality suite. He's an all-time member of the all-time hospitality team. He knows the ins and outs. He knows to use it to his advantages. I'll be watching closely because I need a couple tips as well. But Johnny, looking forward to seeing you out in Los Angeles.
Looking forward to it, Bob.